In October of 2018, Hurricane Michael devastated Panama City. Hundreds of boats were left destroyed and washed ashore, nearly unrepairable. One of those boats is the Bunny Lebowski, soon to be our Athena. This is her story, about how she went from becoming a boat washed ashore to a boat that became a school boat and to eventually our home. The Bunny Lebowski, formerly Bahama Soul, formerly Morning Star, had been in the Panama City area for nearly 20 years. Her current owner had big adventures planned and was ready to set sail across the Gulf of Mexico days before the hurricane came. Delayed by a leaky prop shaft after a new engine was installed, his dreams were dashed. He spent the remaining amounts of money that he had to get her craned back into the water. The company, however, put her into private property, and the Coast Guard threatened to salvage her and crush her soon after. This is where we stepped in. The first glimpses of Athena, as we pumped her out, had her towed over to our docks, were overwhelming. She still had several inches of water inside, and she was an absolute wreck. I knew she had a constant leak in her prop shaft, so step one had to be to get the charging system in order to get those bilge pumps working. Fresh batteries, a cleanup of her wiring, a new battery charger. Lo and behold, all of her lights worked. I was pumped. Let this restoration begin. The next step, the engine. I knew I had to get this brand new engine running, and I knew this was a vital part of this project. Fresh gas, fresh oil, and she started right up on the first crank. I couldn't believe it. The engine was running. And to my surprise, only 7.8 hours on the hour meter. Step 3, I had to fix the leaks. If I didn't, she was going to sink for a third time. To do that, I had a few behind-the-scenes projects. 1, we had to reconnect the steering cables so we could steer the boat. 2, I had to get the bow pulpit welded back in so we had some safety lines. And 3, I had to find a tow to get her there because her bottom was way too foul to move on her own. Here we go. Bunny is getting towed to the yard. Hopefully she sank for her last time. Bilge pumps. Conditions got a little rough. We snapped a tow line out under the halfway bridge. Winds picked up, wind against current, so everything's been a little bit exciting, but we're about halfway there.
Help me out, my long lost friend.
She was finally out of the water, and now it's time to knock out some fiberglass repairs. First repair was what I thought was a gouge in the side of the hull. It eventually showed it was a large hole. I fixed this repair myself, layering up about 12 layers of glass. A little filler and a lot of sanding, and it turned out alright. Amidst all of the fiberglass projects we had going on, we decided to take a break and vinyl wrap the hull.
Tell me all that could have been. And if I start to lose myself, a secret I can never tell. Oh, meet me down by the coast. I'll be waiting there for you until the ocean tide.
To fix the leak in the prop shaft, it involved cutting out the old prop shaft tube and installing a new one that had the proper wall thickness and the proper length. We saved this for the professionals. This process actually involved dropping the rudder, which involved cutting off the steering radial drive, and a whole bunch of other fiascos. I worked on a few more smaller fiberglass projects, just waiting for the professionals to finish up the prop shaft tube. We're getting so much closer. Lots of sanding and a final barrier coat, and it's ready for bottom paint.
And swallow the sky. I'll be waiting there for you. If I get lost among the trees, could they keep me company?
Pleased with our work, we finally vinyl wrapped the transom and we're ready to rename her to sailing vessel Athena. Also worth noting, our prop shaft repair is almost done. From your records. Further, we ask that when she is again presented for blessing with another name, she shall be recognized and shall be accorded once again the selfless privileges previously enjoyed. In return for which we rededicate this vessel to your domain in full knowledge that she shall be subject, as always, to the immutable laws of the gods of the wind and the sea. In consequence, wherefore, and in good faith, we seal this pact with a libation offered according to the hallowed rituals of the sea. To the gods. To fair winds and the following seas.
When the morning light grows dim, come the night I'll find you then. Oh, oh, meet me down by the coast. I'll be waiting there for you until the ocean tides rise and swallow the sky.
Believe it or not, the interior was the most daunting part of this entire project. After having sinking twice, she was covered with mold and everything was a soppy, wet mess. From day one, I lugged off a total of 15 large contractor bags full of just wet, soppy, mildewy, gooey, paper, gear, trash, and all assortments of junk. After the whole boat was cleaned up, it was time to use a vinegar and water solution to spray down the entire interior to kill any possible mold spores that were still alive. From there, I scrubbed the entire boat with a bleach and water solution. Still not satisfied with the results, I went to Home Depot and bought a mold-killing, mold-preventing, mold-resistant paint, and I coated the entire boat with 2 coats of it. It turned out pretty good, and I was happy with the results.
What do you think made the biggest difference for you in the restoration process as far as like a turning point?
When I first painted the V-berth. As soon as I got that first coat of white paint down, I was like, wow, this is pretty. This is really nice. And then I tackled the rest of the boat. An additional coat of an interior latex that was mold resistant and waterproof, she was starting to look like a boat that could be lived in. Throughout this, every cushion was removed and taken to the dry cleaners to be washed in a commercial washer and dryer. At long last, the day finally came and she was back in the water. Of course, we didn't miss a beat. We hoisted her brand new Genoa, enjoyed some light winds and nighttime sailing.
I'll be waiting there for you on the beach you lay.
After drying out the waterlogged floors, a little bit of sanding, a little bit of teak cleaner, a little bit of teak brightener, and a little bit of polyurethane, and they look good as new. This was a big step for us. Athena was ready. We had to make her presentable and make sure we could shake her down and she could survive the abuse of teaching sailing lessons. It was July 2020, and Erica, Zoe, and I took SV Athena out for her first overnight weekend down to our favorite island in all of Florida.
It's the coldest hand that run down this land where the ocean lands. It's the tallest sound, the damn smallest crowd.
It's weird when you start sailing a boat every single day. It's something magical happens. It's things break and you don't care. It's just you fix them and you keep going. You create a connection and a bond with a boat at some point. And sailing Athena every day, I found that moment. It stopped becoming a project and it started becoming something more personal.
But their hearts break loud. Far from ever feeling lost with me, I'll push you back towards the land and sea.
In the early days of the project, something unique happened. I met a girl from Maine while we were sailing, and I instantly fell in love with her.
Stick with me and I will guarantee you're never lost among the crowd with me. Never lost among the crowd with me. Everywhere you go, I'll be.
Erica was a large part of the restoration and helped with all the late night projects that were involved. In December of 2020, we got married and decided it didn't make much sense to have a house in Panama City anymore. We decided to make Athena our home when we lived in the Panama City area. Erica got free rein to add color, some decorations, and make the boat really feel like a home.
It's the sharpest cry. The heat goes but why.
At least the most overwhelming was all the mold on the boat. Everything that's painted white got at least 3 coats of paint on it, and just the initial looking at it and that sense of I've got a long way to go to get there. No, that's not in my DNA to just give in and quit. Once I committed, I think that the sealing deal for me was once I got the charging system going and the electricals were working. I called Jimmy Buss that sold the old owner of the engine. He kind of motivated me to get the engine running, and once the engine was running, I knew I was in. We had a few other hurdles. The boat actually went under again, it sank. But it didn't go down that far and we're able to fix it. But yeah, once
In the fleet.
it was always going to be a school boat. That was the intention of getting it. When we got this boat, I was shopping boats in the 35 to 40 foot range, but nothing in my price range was decent. And something that I like to do when I buy a boat is buy something that's functional right away, which I did not do with this one. But it was always going to be a school boat, and I had a cap where I was like, I don't want to go over this amount of money putting into this boat before I can start using it, and just. Oh, she loves it. It's her favorite. I think she's adapted well to it, and I think the more we do to it, the more time we spend on it, the more she comes around. Any boat's never done. I think next haul out, we'll probably take the vinyl wrap off and go with an actual proper paint job. Nothing. She's perfect. No, big projects left to do. The whole top deck of the boat, including the cockpit, we're gonna paint. It still shows some stains from when she went under, and the old non-skids are just starting to look a little rough. And actually, the cabin top of the boat itself is pretty slick because the non-skid's worn off. So new top side, new top deck paint, and new non-skid on the cabin tops, and maybe even around the cockpit as well. Yeah, I think about people feeling weird being on our house or being in our home, but I think the only time that's really even came up and been even a minor issue was we had a long liveaboard class aboard Atlas, and Atlas's starter went out and we couldn't get the boat started, so we sailed her back into the slip, and I transitioned the entire class and everything we had onto Athena, our home, and I kind of prefaced the transition by saying, you guys are coming into my house, but don't make it feel awkward at all. So we finished the class, another 4 days out at anchor, living aboard the boat, and the last day after testing, I sat the guys down and asked them, was this awkward being on, my home or coming into my house to finish the class? And both of them said no, not at all. They actually enjoyed seeing what it was like to be a liveaboard, and I think it helped that both of those two guys that were in the class were looking to become liveaboards at some point. So for students, I think it's a look into a lifestyle that they're not used to, but they're interested in or maybe pursuing in the future.
All right, so the question everybody wants to know, how much money did you put into the restoration?
Oh, maybe make sure my wife's not listening to this one. Initially I had a really nice spreadsheet that listed everything that I spent on the boat, including slip rent, because I figured as the boat's not working, I need to include that into the cost of the expense of having a boat. So I spent a little bit of time going through it, and around that $17,500, including the purchase price of the boat, is where I stopped counting. And at that point, the boat was usable. I was using it just about every week for a class. And once we moved on the boat, I'd say we added another, with air conditioners, water heaters, even cushions, maybe another $2,000 into that. So I think we could cap it completely at $20,000 from picking her up. I didn't pick her off the ground, but I picked her up out of the water, had somebody pump her out, tow her over to me. So from that point moving to this point, we've got about $20,000 into the boat.